हेलो बच्चों। सीबीएसई क्लास 10th हिस्ट्री चैप्टर 2 पार्ट 1 द नेशनलिस्ट मूवमेंट इन इंडो चाइना। The nationalist movement in Indo-China. Vietnam gained formal independence in 1945 before India, but it took another 3 decades of fighting before the Republic of Vietnam was formed. This chapter on Indo-China will introduce you to one of the important states of the peninsula, namely Vietnam. Nationalism in Indo-China developed in a colonial context. The knitting together of a modern Vietnamese nation that brought the different communities together was in part the result of colonization. But as importantly, it was shaped by the struggle against colonial domination. If you see the historical experience of Indo-China in relation to that of India, you will discover important differences in the way colonial empires functioned and the anti-imperial movement developed. By looking at such differences and similarities, you can understand the variety of ways in which nationalism has developed and shaped the contemporary world. Emerging from the shadow of China. Indochina comprises the modern countries of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Its early history shows many different groups of people living in this area under the shadow of the powerful empire of China. Even when an independent country was established in what is now northern and central Vietnam, its rulers continued to maintain the Chinese system of government as well as Chinese culture. Vietnam was also linked to what has been called the Maritime Silk Route that brought in goods, people, and ideas. Other networks of trade connected it to the hinterlands where non Vietnamese people such as Khmer Cambodians lived. Colonial domination and resistance. The colonization of Vietnam by the French brought the people of the country into conflict with the colonizers in all areas of life. The most visible form of French control was military and economic domination, but the French also built a system that tried to reshape the culture of the Vietnamese. Nationalism in Vietnam emerged through the efforts of different sections of society to fight against the French and all they represented. French troops landed in Vietnam in 1858, and by the mid 1880s they had established a firm grip over the northern region. After the Franco Chinese War, the French assumed control of Tonkin and Annam, and in 1887, French Indochina was formed. In the following decades, the French sought to consolidate their position, and people in Vietnam began reflecting on the nature of the loss that Vietnam was suffering. Nationalist resistance developed out of this reflection. The famous blind poet Nguyen Din Chiu, 1822 to 88, bemoaned what was happening to his country. I would rather face eternal darkness than see the faces of traitors. I would rather see no man than encounter one man's suffering. I would rather see nothing than witness the dismembering of the country in decline. Why the French thought colonies necessary? Colonies were considered essential to supply natural resources and other essential goods. Like other Western nations, France also thought it was the mission of the advanced European countries to bring the benefits of civilization to backward peoples. The French began by building canals and draining lands in the Mekong Delta to increase cultivation. The vast system of irrigation works, canals, and earthworks, built mainly with forced labor, increased rice production and allowed the export of rice to the international market. The area under rice cultivation went up from 2,74,000 hectares in 1873 to 1.1 million hectares in 1900 and 2.2 million in 1930. Vietnam exported two-thirds of its rice production and by 1931 had become the third largest exporter of rice in the world. This was followed by infrastructure projects to help transport goods for trade, move military garrisons, and control the entire region. Construction of a trans-Indo-China rail network that would link the northern and southern parts of Vietnam and China has begun. This final link with Yunnan in China was completed by 1910. The second line was also built linking Vietnam to Siam, as Thailand was then called Siam, via the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh. By the 1920s, to ensure higher levels of profit for their businesses, French business interests were pressurizing the government in Vietnam to develop the infrastructure further. Should colonies be developed? Everyone agreed that colonies had to serve the interest of the mother country. But the question was how. Some, like Paul Bernard, an influential writer and policy maker, strongly believed that the economy of the colonies needed to be developed. He argued that the purpose of acquiring colonies was to make profits. If the economy was developed and the standard of living of the people improved, they would buy more goods. The market would consequently expand, leading to better profits for French business. Bernard suggested that there were several barriers to economic growth in Vietnam: high population levels, low agricultural productivity, and extensive indebtedness amongst the peasants. To reduce rural poverty and increase agricultural productivity, it was necessary to carry out land reforms as the Japanese had done in the 1890s. However, this could not ensure sufficient employment. As the experience of Japan showed, industrialization would be essential to create more jobs. The colonial economy in Vietnam was, however, primarily based on rice cultivation and rubber plantation, owned by the French and a small Vietnamese elite. Rail and port facilities were set up to service this sector. Indentured Vietnamese labor was widely used in the rubber plantation. The French, contrary to the Bernard would have liked, did little to industrialize the economy. In the rural areas, landlordism spread and the standard of living declined. Okay. Next, the dilemma of colonial education in a next video. Thank you.